Welcome to the Let's Learn to Fly podcast. I am Dr. Heather Monty, your host, flight instructor, and passionate educator. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the world of aviation to introduce you to new possibilities and inspire you to let your dreams take flight. All right, new podcast intro. We are set to go and grow this podcast. I'm very excited. So glad to have you here. I'm Heather, and again, I'm your flight instructor and dedicated educator to helping you learn everything you need to know about the aviation world so that you can either start your career, advance your career, or even just join us in this aviation world as a hobby. This episode, what I wanted to do is talk about your private pilot Checkride and everything you need to know about the Checkride. So if you are considering taking flying lessons and you are currently taking flying lessons and you're starting to think about your Checkride, what are some of the things that you need to know about your Checkride, and just what is a Checkride? So I wanted to do this episode because the question came up over the weekend was, what exactly happens on your private pilot Checkride? Now you can go look at the Airman Certification Standards, the ACS. You can go look at that and it'll tell you everything that you're going to be tested on, everything that they're going to be looking for in the Checkride, but just what does a Checkride actually look like? So that's why I got the idea for this podcast episode. So let's kind of dive into this right now. So your private pilot Checkride is obviously a very important milestone to becoming a private pilot. It is the sort of the spot where you get your license to learn. Once you are a pilot, you're constantly learning. You're always learning new things. So sort of this Checkride is when you actually become a certificated pilot, and it's sort of dubbed your license to learn. This is where you're going to start learning a ton the more and more experience you get in aviation. So if you understand exactly what you need to expect on your Checkride, how to prepare for it, you can increase your chances of success on that particular day. So let's talk a little bit about what is a Checkride. What does that term even mean? So a Checkride is the examination that is required in order to earn your pilot certificate. So you will meet with an examiner. Generally, it's a designated pilot examiner. It could be an FAA inspector. There's a couple other roles of people that could actually do your Checkride, but you're going to meet with them, and they're going to be looking to see if you have the skills and knowledge necessary to operate an aircraft safely. All right. So the Checkride itself is going to be divided into two parts, and maybe you could even divide it into three different distinct parts. So I'll break it down here into the three different parts. A lot of times people talk about it being two parts, but I kind of think that we could really break it down into three parts. So the first part is where you're actually going to start preparing for the oral and the flight test. So the second and thirds are going to be your oral exam and then your flight test. You're going to do some pre-planning work before your Checkride even begins, before you even meet with the examiner that particular day. You are generally going to prepare a weight and balance for your flight with the examiner. You'll find out what they weigh and you'll prepare a weight and balance. You will do some cross-country flight planning, and you will gather weather information, actually plan out the flight, calculate fuel, all that good stuff. All right. So there's some things that you're going to be asked to prepare prior to coming to the Checkride. That you don't want to waste time during the oral exam or prior to the flight test actually calculating a weight and balance and then going over it with the examiner. You want to come to the Checkride with that information already pre-prepared. And your examiner will tell you exactly what he or she wants prior to your Checkride. So that's going to be the first step is what is the pre-planning that you need to do for your particular Checkride. Then there's going to be an oral exam where you will sit down with the examiner. It's conversation. He or she will ask you questions and make sure that you really know the things that are on the ACS that you need to know. And then from there, you will have a flight test where you'll actually go up in the airplane, you'll conduct maneuvers, and the examiner is really just looking to see, do you have knowledge of airspace? Do you have knowledge of your flight planning? Was your flight planning actually accurate? So if you get up there and you start your cross country that you have prepared, were your calculations accurate? And if they weren't, how did you adjust them? Things like this. So what can you expect then on the day of your Checkride? You've done your pre-flight planning. You've done all the work that your examiner has asked for you to come prepared with for the flight day or for the check ride day. So on the day of your check ride, this is really important. Arrive early and be well rested. You want to make sure you get a good night's sleep the night before. Avoid alcohol. Make sure you're hydrated. Have a good meal. Follow your I am safe. All of that good stuff. Okay. So you want to make sure that you are you're mentally focused and prepared, and you want to get there early. You don't want to be flustered and feeling like you might have forgotten something or rushed. Or I know for myself, I hate that feeling of being rushed. So it's better to get there early and just give yourself some time to chill out, relax, and just start to get yourself focused for what's about to occur. So your oral exam can last anywhere between 1 to 3 hours or so. So you just want to make sure that you're really just fresh, alert, you're mentally well rested. You're good to go for that. So then you'll start with your oral exam. Your examiner will ask you various questions. You can get the oral exam guide. I will provide a link for you for that as well. I'll put that in the show notes. But there is an oral exam guide that gives you example questions that the examiner will ask you, and then what is an appropriate response. So some of the things are going to be, specific to your airplane. So if you can't necessarily use just a template that, where somebody says, these are the questions you're going to be asked, but you will be asked certain things about your particular aircraft. But make sure you go through that oral exam guide and look at all the different types of questions that you will be asked, and then the appropriate responses for them. And it's a really good idea to do sort of a mock oral check ride, either with your flight instructor or even just hand your book over to your spouse, your friend, a study buddy, somebody, and have them start asking you these questions. And then you should start practicing actually responding to them, verbalizing it, saying it out loud. It's very different to think through something as you're like reading it and it makes total sense. And yeah, that I totally get it. Your oral exam check ride day should not be the first time that you are verbalizing your answers to some of these questions. So when you get to your check ride, these should not be the first time that you have actually spoken the words responding to some of these questions. The same goes for when I tell people about their CFI check ride and they're giving lessons. That should not be the first time that you are actually giving a lesson. This should be, you have to practice verbalizing this, okay? So you want to make sure that you are well prepared to answer any of those questions that are related to anything on the ACS. So you're going to get asked questions about anything on the ACS. Some examiners will look at your knowledge test report and see what areas you might have not done so well on your written exam, and maybe ask you some additional questions there just to ensure that you did in fact go back and restudy and learn up on the things that you did not do so well on the written exam. So from there, you're going to be asked, again, all the different topics that are on the ACS. You're going to be asked questions specific about your aircraft. You're going to be asked questions specific about the cross-country flight that you have planned. You'll be asked specific questions about the weight and balance, about your specific aircraft, the POH, anything that is really specific to your particular flight for that day. The examiner is going to want to make sure that you understand the operating limitations of your aircraft, that you understand that you have absolutely everything, all of the knowledge that is needed for this particular flight. So then from there, you're going to, once the oral exam is complete, then you will do the flight portion of the check ride. So this is where you're actually flying the aircraft with the examiner on board, and they're going to be assessing things like takeoffs, landings, your steep turns, stalls, all of the things that are in the ACS. And you need to demonstrate competency of those particular maneuvers and the different things that are in the ACS. So you want to make sure that you take control of the situation and make sure that you have a conversation beforehand where you confirm with the examiner that you are in fact the pilot in command of the aircraft. And you want to make sure that you are not letting yourself be intimidated by the fact that you're flying with a flight examiner. So the reason I say this is because I remember on my own personal private pilot check ride, my examiner purposely did not put his seatbelt on. And I remember my instructor telling me the exact same thing. So I just turned to him and I said, can you please put on your seatbelt? And then I gave him the safety briefing and, how to take it off, all that stuff. But you may get an examiner who is going to do little things like that to see if you say anything. So you want to make sure that you have that conversation with the examiner. You're the pilot in command and that you're making the decisions. Same goes for if there is an in-flight emergency. You're going to be tested on in-flight emergencies during your check ride. So you need to remember that you are the pilot in command, either in a real, actual, or simulated emergency. So just be prepared for anything. Stay calm. You're ready for this. Your instructor would not have signed you off for this if you were not ready. So just don't let yourself be intimidated by the fact that you're flying with an examiner. So again, questions. Who administers a private pilot check ride? Who can actually do it? So that's generally going to be administered by a designated examiner. They're called DPEs, or designated pilot examiner. There seems to be a little bit of a shortage right now with the FAA with having enough DPEs to do all of the check rides. I know some people are waiting a couple of months. They're ready. They're ready to take their check ride, and then they have to wait 4 months to have a check ride done. So you can do check rides with other people. It's not quite as easy. You can find an FAA inspector. Some schools, depending on the type of school, might have somebody in the school who is actually approved to administer check rides. So you'll want to check with your school to see exactly who they recommend that you do your check ride with. So what are the actual objectives of a private pilot check ride? Again, so you look at the ACS, the Airman Certification Standards, and it tells you exactly all the things that you're going to be tested on your check ride. But let's take a step back here. So the objectives of a private pilot check ride, we've got a couple different things. The first is that this person who is essentially assessing your skills, they're looking to make sure that you have the knowledge and the skills required to operate an aircraft safely. So obviously they're looking at, do you have the knowledge and the actual ability to apply it? Okay. So they're looking for you to show that you can apply the knowledge in order to make safe and efficient decisions during all phases of flight. Okay. So that's one thing that they're doing. But the second is also just to make sure that you meet the actual requirements for the certification, or for the certificate, I should say. So they're going to be looking at things like, have you met the eligibility requirements? Do you have enough of the solo hours? Do you have your cross-country hours? What are the other flight requirements that were needed? Do you have all of that? Do you have your medical? Do you have all of these things? Have you met all of those eligibility requirements? Your CFI should have done that prior to you actually going to your check ride, but the examiner they're doing the double check. They're acting on behalf of the FAA to do that double check to make sure that you have met all the eligibility requirements. So you meet all the eligibility requirements, and then can you demonstrate the knowledge, skills, abilities to be able to operate your aircraft? The examiner will also look through your logbook to make sure that you have all the appropriate endorsements. We don't want to have to call a check ride because we don't have the right endorsements or something like that. So that's the other thing that they're going to be looking for too, is just you meet the eligibility requirements to actually have the private pilot certificate. So how does this work? When we talk about, okay, fine, you can go look at the Airman Certification Standards to see the areas that are typically covered during your private pilot check ride, but how do you know if you've passed, right? So there is no, passing score. It's not like your written exam where you have to, hit a certain score for your private pilot check ride. You need to demonstrate proficiency and competency in all those required areas. And then with your maneuvers, as you're performing them in the ACS, it gives you some guidance on what the sort of amount of error that is okay. Okay. So for example, I'm looking at the ACS right now. We've got ground reference maneuvers. It gives you all of the different, the areas of knowledge that you need to know, the areas of risk management you need to know, the skills that you need to demonstrate the ability to do. And the very last one says that you need to maintain an altitude plus or minus 100 feet and maintain your airspeed plus or minus 10 knots. So for those of you that are really looking for that, well, how do I know exactly what I need to do to pass? This is what it is, okay? So You need to demonstrate that you know all of this stuff. You need to demonstrate that you have the ability to do all these things. Ground reference maneuvers. You have the ability to clear the area. Select a suitable ground reference area line or point as appropriate. You plan the maneuver. You apply adequate wind drift correction. When you're performing S-turns, you reverse the turn directly over the selected reference line. You're dividing your attention between airplane control, traffic avoidance, and ground track while maintaining coordinated flight. And then you maintain your altitude plus or minus 100 feet and maintain airspeed plus or minus 10 knots. So if you're the kind of person that you're just like, I need this like a checklist, I need to know exactly what it is. How do I pass this, right? That's what you need. That is 100% what you need, and you need to be able to do all of it. You have to perform. This is a competency assessment. They are making sure that you have the ability to conduct your flights safely. So how do you prepare for your private pilot check ride? So again, everything goes back to the private pilot ACS. The document outlines all the areas that you're going to be tested on during the check ride. Make sure you use that oral exam prep guide. That is really going to help you too. And like I said earlier, make sure you are practicing answering those questions orally. That your check ride should not be the first time you are actually answering those questions. The next is to practice. Make sure you are comfortable with all of the maneuvers and the procedures that you're going to be expected to perform on the check ride. Make sure you get plenty of rest before you schedule check ride date. You want to make sure you're sharp and focused. Stay calm and confident. Remember, the examiner's not there to fail you. He or she just wants to make sure that you are safe and competent, that you are ready to operate an aircraft on your own, that you are ready to act as pilot in command. So how long does a typical private pilot check ride last? Again, the oral exam can be anywhere between 1 and 3 hours. Practical test, maybe 1 to 2 hours or so. So you can plan a good solid half a day for your private pilot check ride. A lot is going to depend on aircraft and if there's any sort of maintenance issues, or, are you waiting for weather to pass, that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, that's about how long it's going to take you for your private pilot check ride. So what happens if you fail? What happens if you fail your private pilot check ride? You're doing all this work and you are, you're prepared, you feel like you're ready to go, and then something happens on the check ride where you don't meet the standards that are set forth in the ACS. So what you're going to want to do is you want to make sure that you get some guidance from your examiner and find out, what they're going to tell you, what was the issue. Then you want to make sure that you reach out to your flight instructor, get some debriefing, get some guidance from them. And your CFI should be able to help you with the areas that you need to work on and then what you can improve for next time. So when you're preparing for your retake, and let's just hope that you do pass your first time. But if you do go into your check ride and you don't pass it, totally okay. It just means you just needed to brush up on a couple of areas or maybe one particular area first. So when you are preparing then for your retake, make sure you really focus on those areas where you struggled the first time around. Put that extra effort in to brush up on those areas that gave you a little bit of trouble. And this can be an intimidating experience. The whole check ride itself can be a very intimidating experience, but with preparation, you want to make sure that you feel confident, you feel ready. Again, the examiner is not there to fail you. They're just looking to make sure that you are safe, that you have the flying abilities necessary to be pilot in command. And then, if you do fail, make sure that you focus on the areas where you struggled. Then you can retake your check ride, ideally with ease and maybe a little bit more confidence. So if you are interested in learning more about getting your private pilot certificate, I have created a wonderful private pilot FAQ document that will help answer any questions that you might have. I'm going to start making individual YouTube videos for some of these FAQs too. I think I have like 61 different FAQs in this document. And these are questions that I get asked a lot about getting your private pilot certificate. These are also questions that I see a lot pop up in Facebook groups and online forums, things that just really are, can be very confusing, like this right here. That's what sort of gave me the idea for this podcast episode was, a person is asking the question, what is the private pilot check ride like? I get that the ACS tells you exactly what's going to be on, what we're going to be tested on the check ride, but what does it look like? Like, how long does it take? What is it? What is the format, right? So that's the idea where I got for this podcast episode. But anyways, if you are interested in downloading that document, again, I think I've got 61 different FAQs in there about getting your private pilot certificate. You can just head over to letsflyaz.com. There is right on the menu there, you will see where it says free private pilot FAQs guide. You can go there, click on that link, put in your email address, make sure you confirm your email address, and then it will be delivered right to your computer where you can download it, take a look at it, print it up, read through it, all that good fun stuff. So if you have questions, please let me know on that. And but I wanted to make sure that I got some of these frequently asked questions that you might have answered, and hopefully it helps you. And thank you for joining me on this episode. I hope you like my new intro music. I'm kind of excited about it. And I'll talk to you all in the next episode.